Okay, so yesterday we did talk about the summary of the menstrual cycle as denoting three thematic areas. That is the relevant embryology. Then we talked about cell division, in particular meiosis. And then we are concluding today with reproductive physiology, which is the last and third component. So now, just to remind you of where we are coming from, we did talk about the start of the story in embryology with primitive germ cells that migrated to the back of the developing embryo, and the name changed from primitive germ cell, they became oogonia. These oogonia started multiplying to become many in number by mitosis, reaching even a maximum number of 6 to 7 million. However, as they reach around 16 to 20 weeks at that big number, those that want to proceed with the mitosis will die, meaning they will undergo asphyxia, but those that will be clever will go into meiosis. And the name again changes for the third time. From oogonia, now they go into being called the primary oocytes. And then the number obviously will reduce from that 6 to 7 million of the oogonia, but at birth, the girl will be born with about 1 to 2 million in number. And again, as this girl grows and reaches puberty, there will just be about 300,000. So, and every month they'll keep losing some until they reach menopause. A minute of silence for our women. So they're born with a specific number of eggs. So they're in a hurry to go. So that quickly, those eggs before they finish. Now, away from embryology, we talked about cell division, and we said that in meiosis, we have meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. And in meiosis 1, we start with prophase, which is a long phase with 5 subdivisions, which we shall not talk about, but we can just roughly divide it into early prophase and late prophase. And then comes another phase known as metaphase, which is denoted by the chromosome sitting really at the equator, but guided by the centrioles and the mitotic spindle. And then from metaphase, we go into anaphase when they are pulled on either side. And then we conclude with the telophase when we now have 2 cells which have come out of one. But of those 2 cells, one becomes the secondary oocyte, the other one becomes the polar body because it has no cytoplasm and it cannot proceed with further division. So that's the end story for the polar body. Yet, for the secondary oocyte, it will undergo meiosis 2. And at the end of meiosis 2, it will have again 2 cells, of which one again becomes the polar body, which is the second polar body, and then the other one becomes the ova. A big contrast with what happens in spermatogenesis. Because in a male, the first meiotic division gives you 2 cells. They are called the secondary spermatocytes. That's not like a component of the gun. And then, Then the second meiotic division in a male gives 2 cells again, which is 2 for the one secondary spermatocyte and 2 for the other secondary spermatocyte. They are not polar bodies. So it's like we started with 1, it makes 2. This one makes 2, this one makes 2. So in total you have how many? 4. But have you ever heard of something called a tertiary spermatocyte? No. They are now called the spermatids. Okay? Now these spermatids are rounded cells. And then these rounded cells will undergo metamorphosis or some structural changes to become like the tails we see in a spermatozoa. And the process of changing a rounded spermatid into the final spermatozoa is known as spermiogenesis. So spermiogenesis is a component of the entire spermatogenesis. So you end up with 4. But in a female, you can only end up with 1 at each because of the polar bodies which are knocked off. A minute of silence for the men. But I shouldn't even talk about men because I'm a midwife. Okay, now let's go back to the last part. And let us now follow very closely this story. Never mind the lot of writings on the wall. So we are saying that the menstrual cycle, I've been given a pointer, a manual pointer. The menstrual cycle is divided into two further cycles. We have the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle. So we have got events happening on the ovaries and the events happening in the endometrium of the uterus. So for you to have menses, you don't need the fallopian tubes, please. Those are not necessary. No, and even after BTL, the menses will be normal. All you need is the ovaries and the endometrium. Clear? Now, this ovarian cycle is divided into three further phases. We have the follicular phase, ovulation, and the luteal phase. Follicular comes from follicles. Remember where we are coming from? And the luteal comes from corpus luteum. So these are happening in the ovary. The follicular phase takes about 0 to 12 days, whereas the ovulation is between 12th to 14th day. This could be misleading. I should even put, yes, somewhere between 12th and 14th day, whereas the luteal phase will be somewhere from 14 to 28 days. There are some variations. These are just rough numbers. Okay? Then comes...
all members of staff, you are all invited to attend a motivation